Is your practice tired of wrestling with insurance denials, deciphering EOBs, and watching your revenue slip through the cracks? You are not alone. Welcome to The Claim Game, the podcast designed to cut through the confusion and provide you with the best practices for revenue cycle management success. We are Jeremy and Catherine Zug, and we've been with people just like you in the trenches. Each week, we'll break down complex billing processes, share real-world solutions from practices like yours, and ask questions of the game makers and changers of healthcare so you can take control of your revenue. Let's turn those claim denials into deposits and help you return to focusing on patient care. It's time to win the claim game.
Welcome back to the Claim Game. As a reminder, every so often we like to take a pause to get a behind-the-scenes look at the very game that we're playing. We do this by interviewing the game designers and the game makers and game changers themselves. Think of them as the architects of the game, if you will. These special rounds offer invaluable insights into the design and development of the healthcare landscape. By interviewing the game changers and the game makers of the healthcare industry, we get a really unique view of this complex system, and we can gain a better understanding of the rules and nuances of this game that we're playing, this interaction between private practice, regulators, and healthcare insurance companies, payers. This knowledge gives you, the clinician owner, a significant advantage, allowing you to navigate the terrain with significant clarity and make much better strategic decisions in the life of your practice. So get ready to learn directly from the game makers and enhance your understanding of the claim game. Today's game maker is Maya Topitzer. She's the founder of a company called Breksey, an AI-powered client relationship manager, or CRM, built for clinicians who want to run their private practice like a thriving business and not just a side hustle. After leading product development at Spring Health and Cartwheel, launched Breksey to give clinicians the technology that they need to act like the CEOs that they are, from intake to referrals to retention. We are so happy to have Maya on the Claim Game podcast. Please welcome Maya Topitzer. Hey, Maya, welcome to the Claim Game. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jeremy. So excited to be here.
Yeah, we recently met at Joe Sanok's event, the Group Practice Boss Conference in Traverse City, and Maya runs Breksey. So first tell us a little bit about Breksey and how did you get here leading the Breksey team?
Absolutely. So the mission and vision at Breksey is really to enable clinician-owned businesses. So what Joe is doing, what you are doing is really very aligned with our focus. And how I got here, my background is in psych and social work. I started my career on the provider side of the world and quickly realized that I actually wanted to build technology. So I spent the better part of the last 10 years building tech at some of the biggest mental health companies in the world. And through those experiences, learned how to build tech, how to build tech teams, learned that I love all the fun things we can do in terms of innovation, but also learned that I didn't love the way that some of those platforms are pushing the market for therapists themselves, and that we really need investments in community-based care. So that is what brought me to start Breksey, and we're building software for clinician-owned businesses, primarily focusing on that very specific moment from inquiry to first booked appointment.
Yeah, work through with me your or Breksey's definition of patient registration. Do you see patient registration as call to appointment or something bigger than that?
I see it as pretty broad. So again, coming from more of a software world, B2B, selling to big companies, I think a lot about sales and marketing. And I think that therapists are now thinking in that way as well, more so than before. And so we really think about everything from top of funnel, so awareness, all the way to that first intake appointment. And that's important because healthcare is in a way a business. And for therapists to be successful, we need to enable them with the same types of tools that other businesses have to make sure that when somebody finds out about you as a therapist, if they're the right fit for you that they can get to the first appointment really quickly and easily. But that's not the same as booking like a nail appointment, right? Because we are in healthcare. So you need to know a lot more information, sometimes a lot more cumbersome information. And I find that a lot of healthcare practices are still really in the old days of like pen and paper forms or super clunky, long interactions to try to get the information that's needed.
Yeah, when you say clunky, talk about some of the biggest pain points or inefficiencies that you typically see in a traditional patient registration process for private practices.
The biggest one I see that is both a pain for the practice owner, for the clinician, and for the potential client is just a huge amount of back and forth. So if you imagine as a client, you're looking for therapy, this could be something you've been thinking about doing for months or years, and you've finally gotten the motivation to go out and do it. And you probably think that most therapists have a long wait list. So you may actually inquire about 4 different therapists that match your needs or seem to match your needs. And now you're lucky if you hear back from one of them. And that person, even with the best of intentions, is likely to get back to you a day, 2 days later, maybe over email or leaving a voicemail, because it's just hard to catch each other in real time in our busy lives that we all lead. And so now it's like I'm playing phone tag to schedule this appointment that I have worked at months and years to. And instead, I'm just like back and forth email, voicemail, text message. Instead, what we are aiming to do is make sure that people can get that appointment in that moment of motivation, and that the therapists and practice owners can get the information that they need to make sure that the client is actually going to be right for their practice, because that's why the back and forth is happening. Like nobody's doing it just to be annoying.
And this happens not only in the mental health world, but this is a problem in all of healthcare, actually. Like the ghost network idea, right? That
Totally.
you can run through a provider directory database. You can call 9 out of 10 of those, and you'll hear back from maybe one, or maybe even one answers the phone. So you feel like this is an area where there's a lot of innovation. And I think that a lot of practice owners feel like their current system, quote unquote, works, right? But what are the hidden costs of not leveraging a technology tool or AI in patient registration?
Yeah, I mean, a huge amount of this, right, from the payer side and the ghost networks. And I do talk to a lot of therapists who feel like I have this under control. Like I answer everybody within a day and that should be enough. And it might be, but what we actually see in terms of those hidden costs is that people either are missing out on revenue, right? Because whoever answers that potential client first and books them is the one that's going to get that business most likely. So even if you're taking 24 hours instead of 1 hour, you could be missing that revenue. And when you get into even a small group practice, but 20, 30, 50 clinicians, like that really starts to add up. The other hidden cost is you're spending your own time, your own personal time. So we're, business owners, most clinicians in this space are business owners, and you're trying to protect your time, your nights and your weekend time, whether that's with your family or just your own time to unwind. And instead you're sitting there on email, listening to voicemails, playing catch up. And so it's both a way to reclaim your personal time and a way to reclaim lost revenue.
Well, that's right. I mean, you mentioned reclaiming personal time, and I was at a conference this last May, and I don't know if you know Jamie Schreier, but he was a physical therapist and owned a practice. He tells a story about how one day on the way to a soccer game, he's just stopped by the office real quick, right? Quote unquote. And he's like, I'm going to make the game. And the way he tells the story, in about 2 seconds, the time was gone, right? And he had missed the whole game, and it was like dinner time. There's a huge intangible and even tangible cost to that for sure. And I think there's a lot of buzz around AI and tech, and it seems like we're in this like interesting frenzy of activity around AI tool this and AI tool that. But can you break down a couple of the misconceptions about technology and AI in patient registration that you hear often, and what are your responses to those concerns?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's certainly a massive buzz, and I'll touch a little bit on that as it relates to patient registration. The other piece that I pay a lot of attention to is this idea that like AI is going to replace therapy or therapists. And like that's this bigger concern more broadly, although I'm not particularly concerned. Recently, somebody wrote the analogy of like AI is basically cruise control, but you really need to like keep both hands on the wheel really tightly because that's where we are. So
Oh, that's a great analogy.
put that out of the way first. Yeah, that really stuck with me. Um, in terms of patient registration, it's really the perfect use case for AI at this point because it's that nice mix of scripted and unscripted. So we're not doing like totally open-ended things here. We know what the clinician and the practice need to know from the patient. And so we're really checking for a set list of pieces of information that are needed to get that patient set up, get them to the first appointment, name, date of birth, insurance. It's pretty straightforward. There's still some misconception that AI is basically like that, like annoying phone answering experience that we've all had, right? You like call big business customer support somewhere and you're like yelling at a robot on your phone because they won't let you talk to a person. So like, that is not what we're doing. That is important to say. This is both much better than that and like not even in the same realm or type of technology.
Interesting.
And we're also not trying to be everything, right? We're doing this one slice of the pie with getting people started with patient registration, and then we're handing back off to the practice owner, to your front office staff. So we're keeping people very much in the loop here.
Yeah, it's sort of that idea of, so I heard somebody describe the workflow as on your plate or off your plate, right? Like a patient calls, it's on your plate, you get information from them to schedule, now it's off your plate. And then maybe they show up, maybe they don't. So now it's back on your plate. And you're trying to, it sounds like you're trying to limit how many of those action items are on your plate versus off your plate. Is that a good way to think about it? Or have I totally got that wrong?
It's a fun analogy. I think how I would say it is we are trying to minimize that back and forth of on your plate, off your plate, right? Like when I sit down to eat a meal, I want all my food to be on my plate by the time I sit down. And so that is our goal. Our goal is when the practice owner comes to either make that final decision about whether the client's right for them or to show up in that first appointment, everything is on the plate. Like you have all the information that you need and we're not doing any more on off plates. Like I don't know why food is moving off of my plate.
It does kind of seem like it moves a lot on and off your plate. What are some of the biggest successes that you've seen in terms of, like, I don't know what the key metrics would be for success with implementing Breksey in a practice, right? So talk a little bit about the results that you've been able to see, like pre and post Breksey, right?
Yeah, the big one that we track is conversion from inquiry to booked appointment. And so we think of inquiries being anytime somebody reaches out to a potential therapist. That could come in through Psychology Today, it could come in through your website, it could come in directly to your email. Wherever it comes from, that's your inquiry. And we want you to be converting 100% of the inquiries that are the right match for your practice. Typically, we see that number is between like 30 and 50% before we implement.
Whoa.
And we are usually able to double that by getting the platform in place. And that's both because the platform is responding quickly, it's engaging those potential clients very quickly, it's getting you the information that you need. And it's also because now you have all your inquiries in one place. So before you're like juggling Psychology Today, the website, the email, all these different things. Many practice even have like 5 different inboxes, right? But
Wow.
Simply by organizing everything in one place and then making sure that we're on top of them, we see a really significant boost in conversion rate.
Yeah, you said something really important there. You think you should be converting 100% of the clients that are right for the practice. How do you define that?
We let the practices define it. It's certainly not my business to be making that decision on the practice owner's behalf. That can be anything from, there's a practice I'm working with right now that is super solutions focused, all cash pay, loves to work with couples and families. So for that practice, like if you fall into those buckets, you're the right fit, you should be converting 100%, right? We might have a very different practice that is much broader, anxiety, depression, EMDR, CBT, and for them, they take 5 different types of insurance and are working across 3 different states, right? So now we have a much broader swath of what could be the right fit, but that is their right fit. So part of our implementation is also setting up the practice profile so that we're matching people based on how you want to build and grow your business.
Yeah, that's amazing. But there's a ton of variability in what you just said. Cash pay,
Yeah.
very specific client niche versus 5 insurance payers, depending on the locality that that practice is in. That's pretty huge. And then you add in modality, specialty. Have you been able to find that technology can just work through the variability scale much easier than human beings can? I mean, do you lose the human touch? How does that all work?
We definitely find that tech can work at scale really well in this way because, especially with that bigger, more complex example, you might have one front office person and they're getting to the point where they can't keep in their brain anymore who are all the different therapists, right? And what are their preferences and what are their availabilities? And so instead, we're getting this into one system that can actually store that and compare that against the inquiry. And then we maintain the human touch again, in as much as the practice owner wants it. So we can either set up to be fully automated from inquiry to first booked appointment, or we can always have somebody making that decision about if a client inquiry is the right fit or not.
See, this is very smart because for a long time, I think the challenge in patient registration and serving this part of independent practice owners has been the variability, right? Some practices, they want their schedule protected, but they'll make an exception if it's the right client, right? Or, if you're running like a virtual admin company who does this kind of work, it can be very challenging to work through the logistics. But it sounds like you all have kind of cracked the code on like navigating through that.
I'm super bullish that this is the right use for AI in our field. I think, we talked about it before. There's a lot of different ways that people are experimenting with AI in healthcare and mental health. And I think this is a little unexplored niche that just makes a ton of sense because, again, it's that kind of perfect use case of semi-structured data. We have a mostly scripted but not fully scripted conversation. We're not trying to replace care. We're just trying to get people into care more quickly.
Oh, that's great. And talk about the patient experience. So we've talked about the clinician practice experience, and I think doubling the rate of appointments for the right kind of client, for the right kind of clinician is totally transformative for the clinician. What is this like from the patient side? You had mentioned it's not the calling a big company and you get the phone tree and you scream at the robot. So what is that like from a patient perspective?
Yeah, we try to take a really light touch on the patient perspective. So first, they hear back immediately. That can be an email and a text message. That outbound communication is crafted by AI to sound like it is relevant to the practice that they inquired from and also about whatever they're inquiring about. So if I reach out and I'm looking for therapy for my dog for her anxiety, then I'm going to get a text message that says like, hey, we hear you, your dog's been anxious. We're going to figure this out. We're taking new clients, right? Like it's not just a form response. It's actually feels like somebody wrote it for me. And then we're only going to get the information that is missing. So from my initial inquiry, we already know like I'm looking for therapy for a dog, anxiety is the key issue. Maybe I also said I'm in New York. The only thing that's missing is my insurance. So we're only going to ask you to share your insurance and then you're done and ready. The other big, like kind of older, clunkier thing we see with patient registration is like, even if we have this information already, we're still asking people to refill out this entire form, put all the information in again. And so that's what we don't want to do. We're identifying what information has already been provided and only requesting the few extra bits that are needed.
Which takes down your margin for error, I imagine, quite significantly, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we've talked about that before, right? Because then when you get all the way to the revenue cycle, if a date of birth was entered twice and maybe there's a typo in one place, like now we have a massive headache.
I mean, this happens every single day, right? Where billers find some kind of data error or numerical error or down to what you would think would be really simple, right? Like getting the spelling of a name right. But if they're filling it out on a form,
Not simple. Yeah.
that's impossible. possible to write, handwriting and all of that. So I can imagine that the margin for error decreases quite a bit.
Here's the bottom line. Documentation affects your bottom line. Blueprint, the AI assistant for providers, helps you write faster, better notes that keep insurance happy and money flowing for your practice. Check the show notes for the link to give it a try for free.
I think one concern I hear a lot about the current gold rush into AI that we're seeing is that folks are pretty hesitant to share data. So if you had a clinician in front of you, let's say I was like clinician A, who was really hesitant, what do you think would be like a realistic first step that I could take to start to think through AI as a helpful tool in my practice?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think some of that hesitancy is super valid, and we should all be asking, like, what data is being stored where and by who, and how is it being used? So I would start there. Like, let's actually dig into this valid concern. We want to be thinking about security. We want to be thinking about privacy. These are all real and important, and they shouldn't be minimized. Then what we say to folks, and part of why I like where we sit in the overall patient journey, is that we largely exist before somebody is fully a patient. So even though we're built to be fully HIPAA compliant and we take security and privacy extremely seriously, we're not really touching like deep patient data. And we're more so on the marketing side of, this is somebody who could become a patient or a client, but right now, like, you're just Jeremy on the internet who is talking to different potential therapists. So that's a very real conversation that I have with folks. And for the most part, people have been really open and understanding of that. And again, I think it's valid. It's a valid concern with any AI tool that you're considering using. I encourage people to ask those questions.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's great. Really, really helpful. And you do a lot of customer feedback, it seems like, where you get a pretty good list of concerns, I imagine, right?
Yeah, we're talking to customers all day, every day. We go out to dinner with them, as you know. I think part of what I have learned from my previous work building tech is that you're not going to build something useful or valuable unless you're talking to customers. And I don't think or pretend to think that I have all of the answers and I'm going to, sit here in a room and just build the perfect software. Like, we need to really be working with people on what they need.
Yeah, amazing. You mentioned in your origin story that you worked in a lot of other tech environments and you were seeing some trends you were unhappy with. Can we talk about some of those?
Yeah.
What are some of the trends that you saw that were concerning to you that threw up some red flags?
Yeah. I mean, it's a complicated landscape, right? So I think there's a lot of companies that are started with really good intentions and they want to help make mental health care more accessible and they want to help therapists take insurance and do all of these really good things. And then you hit the reality of healthcare in the US as a business, and we have to pay attention to business margins, and you may have to answer to investors, and then things get complicated. And so I think some of the pieces that I can pay attention to are like, where are the incentives, and are we incentivizing people to receive care because that's an important business metric, even if they don't need care? And then does that take care away from other people who need it more? Or how are we interacting with clinicians around these bigger platforms, and how much ownership do they have over the care that they're providing? And are they being treated as partners, especially when developing technology, or are they being treated as the product? So I think it's a really complicated question. And at the end of the day, I just realized that I wanted to build for clinicians instead of building things around them.
Yeah, when does the narrative on some of those trends or motivations shift? Is it with the investor, or are there investors that you can work with that are mission aligned, or am I getting this totally off? Is there like a shift when that happens?
I think so. It's always get complicated when money comes into play.
Yeah.
And I think there are great investors, right, who are super mission aligned and understand that healthcare can take longer and also have these same conversations, right? It's not, again, I don't think anybody's starting these companies with bad intentions. It just gets complicated.
Yeah, and then so you have these like tech companies that can shape the industry. You have the clinicians and the private practices that deliver healthcare, and then you have the payer side. So one of our goals in the podcast here is helping practices thrive and win at revenue cycle management. How, and maybe you don't have an answer to this, but I'd love to hear your answer either way. What have you seen in terms of outcomes from an RCM perspective, a revenue cycle management perspective, when you optimize patient registration with AI or with
Yeah.
technology innovation?
I'll say a few things about the payer side because I think you're getting at this a little bit, right? Just as much as tech companies or VCs can be demonized for their role in this, I think payers and health insurance companies also get,
For
that.
sure.
And similarly, right, they're mostly trying to do good in the world and to cover care and make sure people can get health care. And so, not to say that that is always how it goes and it's complicated, but in terms of using AI for patient registration, making sure that you have the data correct as soon as possible is really useful both for your revenue cycle all the way down the line, but also for that patient interaction of getting a good cost estimate because somebody's much more likely to pay their bills on time if they know what to expect, right? If I think my services are going to be fully covered and then I get $100 bill, I'm going to be annoyed and I'm going to be calling my health insurance company. I'm going to be calling the practice owner, right? And now we're like moving plates back and forth again or something.
And sometimes, like, I was just talking to a friend, Maya. I mean, this is probably a practice I should send you over to. I was just talking to a friend who got services, and a year and a half later, she got a bill. A year and a half
Yeah,
later. It's like, that's
it's
crazy, right? You
wild.
should be able to get a
Yeah,
bill much faster than that. Yeah. So you think
exactly.
patients get
Exactly.
better communication quicker? What else can you see?
Better communication quicker, better data in means better output, right? You're more likely to get your claims paid at the rate that you want them to be paid if you provide the right information and you do so in a timely manner. And then the other thing from a health insurance company standpoint, which is right now not so related to AI, but that I talk to practice owners about, is that health insurance can be a really good marketing channel. People still look to their health insurance for provider lists, even if there are ghost networks, right? And so as you're growing a practice, being really strategic about maybe you do want to take on some payer relationships, even though you were cash pay before, because now you're in a growth phase. So this starts to creep outside of just like the software that we're building, but it's another part of the conversation that I have.
Yeah, it's a really good part of the conversation as well. And I'm curious, are any of your users, I don't know if you can share this, but I'm gonna ask you anyway. Is anybody using the data that you have to talk to insurance companies about getting care quicker or
Mm.
like rate increases based on quality of care? Is that a conversation that you're having, or is that maybe down in the roadmap?
Yeah, it's a great question. We do so in terms of quality of care and comparing rates within a given region. Part of what we're doing also is just building a community, and that means that folks are talking to each other and looking at what they're getting paid for a given CPT code and a given license and a given zip code. And if that's not lining up to where it should be, they then feel more empowered to have those conversations. We haven't delved into the time to care piece yet, and I love the idea. It's definitely on the roadmap.
Yeah, we interviewed Kathy Gilbert, who managed provider networks for a long time, and one of the programs that I didn't realize existed is that it depends on the plan, it depends on the insurance company, it depends on the state. So with all of the normal caveats in place, there are in existence some financial incentive programs at some insurance companies if you can demonstrate that a client can get care quicker because it satisfies a national quality standard. And I imagine that you would be very closely tied with that data, both from the payer side and the clinician side.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Maybe
definitely
that's,
something we have to look into.
yeah, something to think about down the road. And maybe I connect you with Kathy at some point. I mean, she's
That would
really
be
a
great.
wealth of wisdom. And I think the more that practices understand the pressure or the requirements from the insurance company perspective, right? If they understand the rules of the game from the insurance company's perspective, the better they can play it in the marketplace, right?
Yep.
And I think that's one of those variables that I didn't know about until recently. And I think with tools like Breksey, you really give clinicians an edge with that kind of thing. So something to think about down the road for sure. So there was a bunch of AI tools. You're seeing it. I'm sure you're connected to this world at a level that almost nobody else is. What should a clinician, a practice owner, be looking for when choosing an AI solution for patient registration? Like, what are some of the red flags that if a company says you would immediately run for the hills?
Great question. With patient registration specifically, I would definitely look for something that is mental health specific. There are a few others in the space, but there's not a ton. There are more so solutions that are kind of like taking a broad healthcare bent. And the reason that I would avoid those is the same reason I would tell most clinician owned businesses, like, don't bother with Epic or Cerner, right? Like, this is just going to be like way overpowered for what you need. You're going to turn off clients because you're asking for too much information and the wrong information. So making sure first and foremost that you're aligning with tools who understand the mental health space, because it is a bit different, and then asking about all the good stuff: data, privacy, security. I mean, somebody should just be able to talk about that without getting defensive. I think that's bare bones. I haven't encountered anybody who's like, in this space and has weird answers there, but I'm sure they exist. And then you have a business decision to make about how much this platform integrates or doesn't with your other tools. So a lot of the EHRs that many clinicians in our space use are not built to be like particularly friendly with other platforms. And so you can get creative with how you work around those systems, but just making sure that you have somebody who's really a partner with you in onboarding and implementing the system. And so that will be a very different experience than signing up for a software and kind of hoping for the best.
Yeah. What are some of your predictions for regulation around the use of AI? So here, let me give you a little bit of background on that question. So there are certain states, California, as of the time of this recording, California, Colorado, I think New York, have all passed legislation preventing insurance companies from using AI in the processing of claims. So we're starting to see like AI regulation come forward. Do you have any predictions on the regulations or use of AI within the clinician space?
My guess is that it will generally take a long time to catch up to clinician-owned practices specifically, right? So where we tend to see the clinician-facing regulations come down, it's from CMS, and it's really focused on targeting kind of big hospitals. It then gets to a point where it's good recommendation for a community-based business. I would be surprised if we get to a point anytime soon where we really see like local community orgs being super hamstrung by this type of thing. That's also my hope. I think, we should be thoughtful and protective against it, but we also are in a situation where I think most of our legislators don't have the deep understanding of the tech to be making really thoughtful legislation around it yet.
Yeah.
A bit of a
We haven't really
non-answer.
seen like the nefarious uses of AI in the private practice space. And I hope we don't. I mean, that would be the idea that people like you are changing the game and changing the landscape of healthcare with like ethical use of technology. But somebody's going to figure out a way to leverage this in a bad way. And unfortunately, at least in the revenue cycle management space, it's quite simple like if I knew how to build an AI tool, you could probably commit some pretty heinous crimes with AI and the healthcare system. And, I know we're going
Are
to
you
get there
thinking
at some
about
point.
fraud, or what's
Yeah.
yeah.
I think for sure. Like if somebody, not me, because I don't know how to do what you all do, but like you could scrape the EHR data if you had access to it for especially like Medicare, Medicaid numbers, and you could probably defraud those organizations at scale. And I think that's when the legislation, at least my prediction is like that's going to happen, and then legislation's going to hit. And so I could see it coming down from CMS, big hospitals for sure. And then from the other side, I could see it from like this is what's being done. So now we have to make a rule and a policy around it. Hopefully that doesn't happen. What do you think is the next big evolution for AI in patient registration or overall practice management? What do you think is coming?
I am excited and hopeful that we move towards more purely conversational and or chat-based interfaces. And so what I mean by that is most EHRs and Epic and Cerner, especially in this camp, but even the ones that we know and love in our world, simple practice and therapy notes, just involve a ton of clicks, and you are like 20 clicks deep to get to this very specific piece of information. And that involves a lot of training for new clinicians. It ends up being really time consuming, manual, repetitive tasking just to do the technology rather than to see clients. And so my hope is actually that we get to a place where we spend more time interacting with technology in the way that you would with a really great office admin, for example. And you're able to just say, who am I seeing today? What's my client list? What should I be aware of? And at the end of the day, you say, things went well, it's all good, submit the claims, right? And then maybe you have some type of ambient listening in the sessions that's also writing the notes. But like, my hope is that therapists have their day and their time seeing clients, and they get reimbursed, they get paid well, and they are not spending nights and weekends on admin work.
Wow. Yeah, that would be the picture you painted would be a really great place to get to, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's probably coming.
We have the technology to get there. It's just not like a sexy, exciting thing to do quite yet, but I'm hopeful.
Well, I even think with like, I'm sure you have doctor friends, right? And they hate all the administrative paperwork. They're like, I can't believe I became a doctor to do paperwork all day.
Totally.
And
I sat next to a nurse recently at a dinner, and she was like, I'm leaving nursing because I spend more time clicking buttons in Epic than I do seeing patients. And we have a nursing shortage. So like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, well, what we're doing is we're failing healthcare clinicians. Not you, not we, but like the system we have. And so I'm very thankful for companies like yours that are innovating in the tech world to make this a lot simpler. Because again, it's that on your plate, off your plate transaction that really burns people out. And so, like you said, leave the food on the plate or take it off.
Right. Yeah.
Either way.
Why is the food moving around?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, you're working on really exciting stuff. Where can our listeners go to learn more about you and about Breksey and the work you're doing?
Find me on LinkedIn. I love to connect with clinicians. I spend all day, every day doing it. Our website is breksey.com. And I'm sure it will be linked somewhere related to this episode. And just reach out. I hopefully have also shown that I am friendly and like chatting with people. And so with no real agenda, always happy to talk about what it actually looks like to use AI in this space, because I know it still is something that feels newer for a lot of folks.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, last question. This is a question we ask everyone in our episodes that we interview. But if our listeners could take just one piece of advice from everything that you know about tech and AI and practice management, what would be the one piece of advice you could give them?
One is so hard.
Yeah.
That's a great question. This is loosely related to tech and practice management, but my standard piece of advice for most people in healthcare, ask for more money. Most people don't realize that they're in the position to do that, but everything is a negotiation. And remember that you have power in that. And then find folks like Jeremy, like Breksey, who will support you in making the money that you earned. You went to grad school, you got a degree, you got a licensure, tons of hours, thousands of hours of clinical training, and that should not be undervalued.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Thank you so much, Maya. Really appreciate you being here. And have a great rest of your week.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Jeremy. It was great fun.
If you enjoyed today's episode of The Claim Game, please take a moment to leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. It really helps new listeners to find us. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to The Claim Game on your favorite podcast app. Your feedback means so much to us. We want to provide valuable education about revenue cycle management. So if there's something we didn't cover in our topic that was a burning question for you, please let us know so we can try to get you the information you desire. You can find the links to all resources we mentioned in this episode in the show notes. And if you want to dive deeper into our resources, we have 2 places you can do that. First, you can go to our blog at practicesol.com/blog, where we have 8 years of educational blogs. If you want to learn more about what Practice Solutions does, reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Just go to practicesol.com to learn more and to connect with one of our awesome people on our team. Thanks for listening. We are Jeremy and Catherine Zug, and this is The Claim Game. See you at the game table next time.